Hi Deborah, welcome to Appleby and thank you so much for coming up to film all these wonderful videos.
Oh, that's my pleasure. Appleby's so beautiful. It's not been hard work.
That's fantastic. So the Dunollie designs that you did, which was the first one?
So the first one we did a couple of years ago now was the one that was based around the honeysuckle and the rose motif. That one had 3 different colourways of leaves. And the very first one we did actually a really long piece of the Elizabethan braid stitch that was going to be used on it. But actually we've slightly altered the designs now to make that a little bit less of the focus and a bit more balanced designs. And there's so many motifs on that particular piece of textile. We could keep going for many kits.
The actual clothing that it came on obviously is in pieces, and I know lots of people who want to put it together, and I think that when we're in Scotland next time you might want to take templates of those designs and see where they fit.
Yeah.
And where the emphases were of the actual designs.
It's pretty fascinating textile, isn't it? The fact that they've thought so much of it that they've kept every single tiny piece, because not only have you got those pretty complete sections which are very easy to see how they work in the garment, but you've got all those selections of the tiny little parts, which is just the embroidery left as well. So somebody really valued that.
Yes, absolutely. Now I wondered about the scale, because obviously the scale is tiny, but for a modern embroiderer, is that achievable in the threads of today?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it is. We use a really great silk. We're using the De Vere silks. They come in skeins where you've got 10 pieces, but you can split that down to however many pieces you want. So the kits, the way that we've put them together, because we wanted them to be accessible and doable within a reasonable amount of time for everybody, we were splitting those up into 5 strands. But if you wanted a much finer version of exactly the same textile, there's nothing stopping you doing the same thing in 3 or even 2 strands. It's just going to take you longer to complete each element.
And are the gold threads, the metal threads, similar to the ones that were used originally?
Oh, absolutely. The gold threads, that's the lovely thing about this type of embroidery. Historically, they haven't changed at all. The manufacturing process of those particular materials has not changed since they were invented. And that's what's so nice, that we're really stepping back in the shoes of the people that did those textiles hundreds of years ago. Nothing's changed. The materials have stayed the same. The tools that we use have stayed the same. That's what I find is that kind of really feeling of that prickly on the hairs on the back of my arms, because I really feel like I've walked into the shoes of somebody else.
So with the first design you did, which were your favourite pieces?
Well, for the Dunollie piece, I love the honeysuckle motif. That's really lovely because it's just the colours of it are really nice. And I really love the Elizabethan braid stitch. I think once you get your head around it, because it can be a little bit kind of complicated of the over and unders, you do get into the kind of rhythm of it, and it's very kind of therapeutic. Like I find many embroidery stitches, actually, you get into a real rhythm of the way that you work, and you're really kind of inspired by the fact that you start off at A, and then by the time you've progressed, you can see a natural progression in all of these things. So I just think it's such a nice thing to learn, and it's not many kits that have those stitches in. So it's a really lovely thing to learn to then add to your embroidery for the future.
So when you stitched the Borage and Pansy, did you decide on all the colours that were in the actual design, or did you add to anything?
We tried to keep the colours as close as the original as we could. The nice thing about the Borage and Pansy design is that one of the motifs is the same as the original one, which is the rose, but the Borage flower is an entirely new motif for that particular piece, but also it's slightly different technique of using those threads. So it's a much more naturalistic way of shading with the silk threads. So instead of you using those definite blocks of colour, it's much more of a natural gradation. So it's a really nice thing to be able to add to the same range, really, and just give you a different skill set.
I did think that the original piece was very unfaded and unused.
Yeah.
And I didn't think it had been worn very much.
I'm not sure it was ever worn. I'm not sure if it ever got to the stage beyond the pieces being made up to be used into a garment. And then they've been just very well cared for and kept in storage and hidden away because it's so vibrant. The colours are so amazing and so vibrant. It looks like the day it was made. And the fact that it's of its age meant that they're all natural dyes as well. So it's just it's an amazing piece of embroidery. It's lovely.
It's in the family archives. There's evidence that one of the family went to France a lot, and of course came back by the sea route, which was much safer than coming up through England. So the trade in the coast of Scotland at that time from the Highlands would be to France and back. So do you see similarities between this work and the English Elizabethan embroidery?
Oh, absolutely. You definitely get some of the very similar motifs. And something that I've been looking at for my own personal learning is that I'm doing an MPhil at the moment. So I've been looking at the kind of design inspiration of historic embroidery. So one of the things that was really heavily influenced embroidery of that age was that start of using printed books and printed documents. And they were using herbologies and they were started printing text documents where they were copying motifs. So you often see the similar motifs but done in different colours or different colourways. And we also see them in beautiful examples of portraiture where you've got those same motifs that are going across that history period. It's lovely. So if the textile doesn't exist, sometimes we have examples of it in the portraiture.
I had hoped that we would find a portrait at Dunollie of that piece, but unfortunately, I think through family breaking it down a bit, you often lose important portraits to various parts of the family.
Yeah.
But one day we might see something coming up
I know.
at auction.
Maybe somebody watching this video will suddenly say, do you know, that looks really familiar. I might have that in my attic.
Would be wonderful, wouldn't it? So, Debs, when you stitched the Gawthorpe Poppies, were you thinking of the arts and crafts movement, or what went through your mind about the people who stitched it originally?
Yeah, I think you can't help but be inspired by that point in history. I'm a bit of an arts and crafts fan anyway, so I really love that kind of influence of design. I liked the way that the original textile was such a size, and the colours again were so vibrant for its age. But I liked the fact that we could take some of those motifs and make it into a smaller, more usable design for the piece. So in that way, in a very similar to the arts and crafts movement, we took one of the motifs and then transposed it across. So we had an element of symmetry to do that. So it's kind of those two symmetrical corner motifs with a slight asymmetry aspect to it. But I just wanted to build into it a little bit more of the naturalistic shading that quite often people struggle with long and short shading. So the original piece was a little bit more blocky. So we have built in a little bit more of that natural shading, but hopefully we've kept that real vibrancy of the colour of the original textile.
I must say you absolutely nailed it with that design, as you know. We were very thrilled when we saw it. Even in the photograph, you could see the subtlety there in your version compared to the original. So you'd made something beautiful even more beautiful, which is amazing achievement. Well done. But for the person stitching it with when they buy a kit, which parts might they find challenging?
Well, I'm hoping that the documentation that you supply with your kits is so clear and so good, and I'm hoping the videos will give people that assistance, that even if they have experience in long and short shading, there'll be tips that they can pick up which will improve their technique. It's kind of slightly a design of two halves. So the leaf motifs are a bit more simplistic and a bit more stylized in their nature. So they're a bit more kind of blocks of colour. Whereas the actual flowers themselves, I've gone very much towards that much more natural look of silk shading and that real blend of colour to be able to give you that feeling of something being a little bit more three-dimensional, which I think possibly comes through a little bit more in our design than it does on the original piece. So I'm hoping that it'll be something that will appeal to everybody.
Can you say a little bit about the colours of this piece?
Yeah. So when we originally were looking at this, we were really keen to try and match as close as possible the linen colour on the background as well. So we wanted that real vibrancy. So we went for that tobacco, that dark rusty colour linen fabric that we managed to source. And I think that in combination with the greens that we've used throughout the leaves and the bright, vivid yellows of the poppy flowers themselves makes it really stand out. It's interesting because I have done a sample on a much paler piece of fabric and it looks an entirely different effect, actually. I'm really pleased that we stuck to that very dark background, which really sets off those vibrant colours.
It's such a typical colour for the arts and crafts.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah.
I sometimes think about the arts and crafts movement that they wanted the pieces to have the historic reference, but to make it look as though they just inherited it, rather than it was a bright new thing.
Yeah.
And they wanted that slightly antique look.
Yes.
The colours are much more, like the background colour of the tobacco is almost like an aged linen, or as though it had had light damage already.
And it's one of those things that when you look at any of the documentation that goes with the arts and crafts movement, William Morris in particular, but May Morris in particular, who's an amazing embroiderer, she was very keen to make sure that design was the paramount thing. So the design had to hold its own. So it was no good having a poor design to be stitched. The design was the everything. So to make sure that you were happy with that overall outline of it and the balance of the piece. And then it was the colours and it was the technique that sort of sat underneath that, really. But it's the whole package. It is the whole package of the arts craft movement and the quality of the pieces.
So which are your favourite stitches?
So, do you know, I'm not actually sure I've got a favourite stitch. I like them all equally. It's like children.
Such a good answer.
I can't identify one over another one. I think I'm not so enthusiastic about things that are just one colour. But actually, I really love your red work.
That's nice of you.
But it's
I didn't do it alone.
Yeah, it's black work and white work I love, but I get really inspired by the colours.
Yes,
you're
so good on your colours.
Yeah, I love colour work. I love blending colour. I like that because I've got a real interest and passion in drawing and art as well, and painting. So I think for me, that's what I take through to embroidery. I really like depicting other art methods in stitch, because embroidery is my personal medium. And I've got this, thankfully for me, because of my teaching career, I have got this amazing talent to be able to visualize right from a flat single drawing how it's going to look stitched. I've got this kind of second mind's eye that I can close and I can view it as a stitched thing, and I can make a lot of decisions on the hoof as I go, which a lot of other people really prevaricate over and kind of find it a bit kind of, they torture themselves over those choices. But to me, I can kind of close my eyes and I can imagine what things are going to look like. So because I've got such a really good teaching background in lots of different techniques, I like to bring all of the different elements into something. So I can't really say that I've got one stitch that I love more than anything else, because even when it's a stitch that's maybe specifically known for a certain technique, I like to put it into something else. So, and I like to look at an outline and think, well, if I had 10 different versions of this, I could do it in 10 different ways, using 10 different colourways and 10 different methodologies of filling or leaving open space within the design, and you get 10 very different outcomes. So that's what I kind of like about it. It's the versatility of the medium.